Here we have some algebraic equations that we need to solve for a variable. And this is stuff you probably learned how to do in Algebra 1, and this is meant as a review, a refresher, to get you back in the frame of mind of solving equations before we move on to some more difficult stuff. One of the first things to look for in any algebraic equation is parentheses. So if there are parentheses, you want to try to simplify what's inside the parentheses. If there's some number snugged up to the left side of the parentheses, you need to multiply that through, distribute it, as we say. So we multiply the 5 times the x and the 5 times the negative 1. What you're going to get there, 5 times x is 5x, 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. And then we'll just go ahead and write the rest of this. So that's a plus 5 and a minus 4x. The next step here is to find any like terms on a side and combine them. On this side, what jumps out at me is I have a negative 5 and a plus 5. Those would add up to 0. So I can just sort of forget about those. And then I have a 5x and a negative 4x, while 5x minus 4x is just 1x, or x. So this side simplifies to x, and then this side is 4, so we're done. We've solved it. X equals 4. Of course, if you wanted to check your work, you could take that 4, plug it back in wherever you see x, and see that the equation balances. Let's try another. This one's pretty similar. We've got some parentheses to deal with here. We've got to distribute this too. The only difference really is that there's x's on both sides of the equation, and I'll remind you how to deal with those after we've done the distribution. So let's go ahead and distribute this 2. So 2 times 4x is 8x, and 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. And then on this side we have x plus 4. So I've got a single x over here, 8x over here. The way to move the x's around so that they're all on one side is to add or subtract x's. And if I just simply subtract 1x from this side, that x would disappear. Of course, I have to do the same thing over here to keep things balanced. So let's do that step. Over here we get a 4. Over here we get 7x minus 12. Now I want to get the x term alone, and I've got this minus 12 on this side, so I have to do the opposite of minus 12, which is plus 12. So I've got on this side 4 plus 12 is 16, and on this side I've got 7x. X is now multiplied by 7, so we want to simplify that by dividing both sides by 7. This comes out just to x, and our answer then is x equals 16/7. So one like this up here looks a little complicated because it has these decimals and negative signs and so forth, but really it's no more complicated than any of these other ones. You just might need to pull out your calculator to work through them. The first thing we need to do is distribute this negative 8. So a negative 8 times a negative 0.27. Let's just pull out the calculator for that. Sorry, negative 0.8. So negative 0.8 times negative 0.27. So that's 2.216. And then a negative 0.8 times 2x is going to be a negative 1.6x. And over here we have a negative 1.4x. And the next question is, how do you get the x's on just one side? Again, by either adding or subtracting, just like we did in the last one. In this case, I want to end up with a positive x. I think it's just easier when you keep the signs positive. So what I'm actually going to do is add 1.6x to both sides. So I chose the negative x with the larger magnitude to add to both sides. What that does, this disappears, that becomes 0. I still have my 0.216, and then over here a negative 1.4 plus 1.6 is going to be, oops, that equal sign didn't look too clear, 0.2x. And to finish this problem, we're going to have to divide 0.216 by 0.2. This number, this 0.216, is going to get bigger when we divide by 0.2, which might seem counterintuitive, but when you divide by a number between 0 and 1, things actually get bigger. It's like you're dividing by a fraction. So divided by 0.2, and that's 1.08, so x equals 1.08. All right, one more here, and this one's just a little bit complicated because it has parentheses within parentheses. So sometimes they'll change the style of the brackets to show you how many times it's been nested. What you want to do is go to the innermost parentheses and deal with that first. So we have this 7 minus a, and right outside it we have a negative sign. That needs to get distributed just like a number would. So it's like multiplying by -1. So we're going to have a -7 and a positive a after we distribute that negative sign. And then I'll put this a back, and then we've got our brackets, and outside that we have a 4, and then of course over here we have 6 times a plus 3. Now we have a second round of distribution to do. This 6 needs to get distributed. This 4 needs to get distributed. Well, you could distribute it to all 4 of these things, but I see I've got an a plus an a, so why don't we just go ahead and combine those like terms and get rid of that. A plus a is 2a, so this comes out to be 2a minus 7. So we're going to distribute the 4 there. So let's do all this distribution. 6 times a is 6a, and 6 times 3 is 18. 4 times 2a is 8a, and 4 times a -7 is -28. All right, we've got a's on both sides of the equation. I think I'm going to subtract 6a from both sides. On this side, that's going to leave just 18. And on this side, 8a minus 6a is 2a, and then we have our minus 28. I'm going to get rid of that minus 28 by adding 28 to both sides. And we should get 46, I think. And then finally, just divide by 2 to get the a alone. And we get a equals 23. So that is a little bit of a refresher with solving algebraic equations.